Mogadishu Somali, Mogadishu or Hamar, locally known Hamar, is the capital city and most populous city of Somalia. The city has served as an important port connecting with traders all round the Indian Ocean for millennia, and has an estimated population of 3,388,000 in 2021. Mogadishu is located in the coastal Banadar region on the Indian Ocean, which, unlike other Somali regions, is considered a municipality rather than a federal state. Mogadishu has a long history, which ranges from the ancient period up until the present, serving as the capital of the Sultanate of Mogadishu in the 9th to 13th century, which for many centuries controlled the Indian Ocean gold trade, and eventually came under in the 13th century, which was an important player in the medieval Silk Road maritime trade. Mogadishu enjoyed the height of its prosperity during the 14th and 15th centuries, and was during the early modern period considered the wealthiest city on the East African coast, as well as the center of a thriving textile industry. In the 17th century, Mogadishu and parts of southern Somalia fell under the Hirab Imamate, and in the 19th century came under the Geledi Sultanate's sphere of influence. The onset of Italian colonialism occurred in stages, with Italian treaties signed in the 1880s followed by economic engagement between Somali clans and the Italian Benadir Company, and then direct governance by the Italian government after 1906 and the British military administration of Somalia after World War II, and the UN Italian Trust territory in the 1950s. This was followed by independence in 1960, the socialist, three-decade civil war afterward, and as of the late 2010s and 2020s a period of reconstruction. The origins of the name Mogadishu, Mogadishu, has many theories, but it is most likely derived from a morphology of the Somali words Mulk and Disho, which literally means sight killer or blinder, possibly referring to the city's blinding beauty. Other theories suggest the Persian word which means the seat of the Shah, and another theory is that it is derived from the Arabic root Mqds, which means hallowed place, but the place is far too ancient. The 16th century explorer Leo Africanus knew the city as Mogadishu, alt. Mogadishu. Tradition and old records assert that southern Somalia, including the Mogadishu area, was inhabited very early by hunter-gatherers. Although most of these early inhabitants are believed to have been either overwhelmed, driven away or, in some cases, assimilated by later migrants to the area, physical traces of their occupation survive in certain ethnic minority groups inhabiting modern-day Jubaland and other parts of the south. The latter descendants include relict populations such as the Isle or the Waribi, and especially the Waboni. By the time of the arrival of peoples from the Cushitic, who would go on to establish a local aristocracy, other Cushitic groups affiliated had already formed settlements of their own in the subregion. Sarapian. The ancient city of Sarapian is believed to have been the predecessor state of Mogadishu. It is mentioned in the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, a Greek travel document dating from the 1st century AD, as one of a series of commercial ports on the Somali littoral. According to the Periplus, maritime trade already connected peoples in the Mogadishu area with other communities along the Indian Ocean. During ancient times, Mogadishu was part of the Somali city-states that engaged in a lucrative trade network connecting Somali merchants with Phoenicia, Ptolemaic Egypt, Greece, Parthian Persia, Sabaeans, Nabatea, and the Roman Empire. Somali sailors used the ancient Somali maritime vessel known as the Bedan to transport their cargo. Foundation and origins. The founding ethnicity of Mogadishu and its subsequent sultanate has been a topic of intrigue in Somali studies. I.M. Lewis believed that the city was founded and ruled by a council of Arab and Persian families. However, the reference I.M. Lewis received traces back to one 19th century text called the Kitab al-Zunaj, which has been discredited by modern scholars as unreliable and unhistorical. More importantly, it contradicts oral, ancient written sources and archaeological evidence on the pre-existing civilizations and communities that flourished on the Somali coast, and to which were the forefathers of Mogadishu and other coastal cities. Thus, the Persian and Arab founding myths are regarded as an outdated false colonialist reflection on Africans' ability to create their own sophisticated states. It has now been widely accepted that there were already communities on the Somali coast with local African leadership, to whom the Arab and Persian families had to ask for permission to settle in their cities. It also seems the local Africans retained their political and numerical superiority on the coast, while the Muslim immigrants would go through an assimilation process by adopting the local language and culture. Mogadishu, along with Xyla and other Somali coastal cities, was founded upon an indigenous network involving hinterland trade, and that happened even before significant Arab migrations or trade with the Somali coast. That goes back approximately 4,000 years, and are supported by archaeological and textual evidences. This is corroborated by the 1st century AD Greek document The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, detailing multiple prosperous port cities in ancient Somalia, as well as the identification of ancient Sarapian with the city that would later be known as Mogadishu. When Ibn Battuta visited the Sultanate in the 14th century, he identified the Sultan as being of Barbara origin, an ancient term to describe the ancestors of the Somali people. According to Ross E. Dunn, neither Mogadishu or any other city on the coast could be considered alien enclaves of Arabs or Persians, but were in fact African towns. Yaqut al-Hamawi, a Muslim medieval geographer in the year 1220, describes Mogadishu as the most prominent town on the coast. Yaqut also mentioned Mogadishu as being a town inhabited by Berbers, described as dark-skinned and considered ancestors of modern Somalis. By the 13th century, Ibn Sa'idi described Mogadishu, Merka and Barawa, located in the Benadir coast, had become Islamic and commercial centers in the Indian Ocean. He said the local people in the Benadir coast and the interior were predominantly inhabited by Somalis, with a minority of Arab, Persian and Indian merchants living in the coastal towns. Ibn al-Mujawwir mentions the Banu Majid, who fled the Mundhiriya region in Yemen in the year 1159 and settled in Mogadishu, and also traders from the port towns of Abayan and Haram. Mogadishu is traditionally inhabited by 4 main Rear Hamar Jibal Mado, dark skins, clan groupings, Somali, Afarda Rearzamer. These are the Morshi, Iskashato, Daberwain, and the Bondawal. And with Morshi being regarded as the oldest group in Mogadishu, and is considered to be who established one of the most powerful medieval kingdoms in Africa, are said to hail from Somali groups from the interior and from the north, and make up the majority of Benadiris, with a small minority being which descend from Muslim immigrants. By the 17th century, the Hirab Imamate was a powerful kingdom that ruled large parts of southern and central Somalia. It successfully revolted against and established an independent rule for at least 2 centuries from the 1700s and onwards. The alliance involved the army leaders and advisors of the Haber Guider and Dudable, Sheikh Hall, and the Imam was reserved for the Abdul, who was believed to have been the firstborn. Once established, the Imamate ruled the territories from the Shabelle Valley, the Benadir province, the Marig area, all the way to the arid lands of Nudug, which included the ancient port of Hobyo. Hobyo served as a prosperous commercial center for the Imamate, while Mogadishu served as the political center where the ruling dynasty resided. The agricultural centers of El Dur and Haradhir included the production of sorghum and beans, supplementing with herds of camels, cattle, goats and sheep. Livestock, hides and skin, whilst the aromatic woods and raisins were the primary exports, as rice, other foodstuffs, and clothes were imported. Merchants looking for exotic goods came to the Imamate to buy textiles, precious metals and pearls. The commercial goods harvested along the Shabelle River were brought to Mogadishu for trade. The increasing importance and rapid settlement of more southerly cities, such as Mogadishu, boosted prosperity, as more ships made their way down the Somali coast to trade and replenish their supplies. By the late 19th century, the Imamate began to decline due to internal problems. The Imamate also faced challenges from imperialist kingdoms, the Zanzibari Sultan from the coast, from the interior, from both directions. Medieval period Mogadishu Sultanate. The Mogadishu Sultanate was a medieval Somali sultanate centered in southern Somalia. It rose as one of the preeminent powers in the Horn of Africa under the rule of Fakhr ad-Din before becoming part of the expanding Ajuran Empire in the 13th century. The Mogadishu Sultanate maintained a vast trading network, dominated the regional gold trade, minted its own currency, and left an extensive architectural legacy in present-day southern Somalia. A local city-state which much influence over the hinterland neighboring coastal towns. Entrance of a coral stone house in Mogadishu. For many years Mogadishu functioned as the preeminent city land of the Berbers, as medieval Arabic speakers named the Somali coast. Following his visit to the city, the 12th century Syrian historian Yaqut al-Hamawi, a former slave of Greek origin, wrote a global history of many places he visited Mogadishu and called it the richest and most powerful city in the region and was an Islamic center across the Indian Ocean. Mogadishu is situated on the Indian Ocean coast of the Horn of Africa of Northeast Africa, in the Banadar administrative region in southeastern Somalia. The region itself is coextensive with the city and is much smaller than the historical province of Banadar. The city is administratively divided into 18 districts of Abdiaziz, Bandhir, Dainil, Darkanli, Hamarjajab, Hamarwain, Helawa, Hadun, Halwadag, Karen, Shangani, Shibis, Wapari, Wadajar, Wardhigli and Yakshid. 124 features of the city include the Hamarwine Old Town, the Bakarara Market, and Jazeera Beach. The sandy beaches of Mogadishu have vibrant coral reefs and are prime real estate for the first tourist resorts in many years. The Shebelle River rises in central Ethiopia and comes within 30 kilometers, 19 miles, of the Indian Ocean near Mogadishu before turning southwestward. Usually dry during February and March, the river provides water essential for the cultivation of sugarcane, cotton, and bananas.